What's the dealio? And I don't know if anyone can hear me.
We can. How are you
We
doing,
can.
John?
I can see everyone. But I don't know
We
if
can
anyone
hear
can
you,
hear me.
Johnny.
I
We
can't
just
hear
can't see
anybody.
you.
There we go.
Oh,
Whatever you did, John, that was it.
you were there.
Hello, everyone. If you could hear me,
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
I can't hear anyone yet.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Margaret.
Maybe there
Okay.
is a.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Okay, you can hear me, obviously. Hello, Linda, how are you?
Good. Hi, Johnny. Good to see you.
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Everyone, it looks like we got
Hello, Margaret.
all commissioners here. So how about we get started?
Lee, how you doing? I'm saying hello to everybody, but I can't hear anything.
Oh no.
We hear you just fine.
I think there's a button up here somewhere.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
That I'm supposed to click.
I don't think
No,
you
I can't
can.
hear.
Yeah.
Probably a headphone issue. I've had that happen with people who work in telecom and you'd expect
I'm
them to
gonna
know how
put
to
a
do it. And
chat.
after the meeting, they say, I can't figure out the audio. It's like, oh my God.
We send him a text, tell him to unplug the headphones.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. I don't think he's accessed his phone in front of him. Yeah, sorry. I guess he can't hear this. Sorry, John, we're about to meet you. Sean, could you make him mute it so we can just get started? Thanks. Okay. So welcome. This is the March 2024 General ANC 1C meeting. It looks like we have, I think, the first time all 9 sitting commissioners finally on a meeting together. So this is great. Let's just start with quick introductions. Let's start with, how about just go up in order? 1C01, start with Commissioner Michelson Horowitz.
Hi, I'm Daniel Michelson Horowitz, representing
Hello, Jake, how are
1C.
you?
Oh, we can hear you. Can you hear us now? Oh, okay. 1C01. That's the southern tip of Adams Morgan, bounded by Florida on the south, Wyoming on the north, and 18th on the east, and Columbia and Connecticut on the west.
Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
I
My
did
name
click
is
join as
Commissioner Lee
panelist.
Gibson. I represent 1CO2, which is Colorado Triangle, which is the space between Connecticut and Columbia.
All right, I'm Peter, 1C03, 18th to 19th, Biltmore, Wyoming, right in the middle.
Hello. I'm Commissioner Joe Van Wy, 1CO4. I'm northwest of 18th Columbia, sort of the northwest corner of the ANC.
Hi,
Okay,
I'm
I'm
Commissioner
voting.
Margaret
I
Stevens,
still can't hear
representing
anything.
1C05. We're the portion of Lanier Heights that is bounded by Rock Creek Park, both Rock Creek Park and Walter Pierce Park. And guys, I apologize. I'm gonna have to leave my camera off. I had some dental work and I'm a little scary. I'll be good for the PZT meeting though. So anyway, that's all.
Hi, Linda Laughlin, 1CO6, the eastern side of Lanier Heights, so closer to Harvard, 16th Street, and Columbia Road.
Hey everyone, Commissioner Jake Valaskini, 1CO7, 18th essentially to 17th from Florida, up to about Columbia with a couple jigs and jags here and there.
Barney Shapiro, 1C08, the southeast corner. I go from where Jake ends over to 16th and then basically down to Florida. By the way, people ask me to turn my camera off because I'm so scary.
I don't think any of us
No,
need
you're
to.
not. You're fine.
No need to comment on that, but let's move ahead. John, how about you introduce yourself?
Hello, hello.
You got it. Perfect. We can hear you. Floor is yours.
Apps.
Just doing introductions. I don't think his audio is working. All right. Well, we'll work with that. Jones is northeast corner of Adams Morgan, 1C09. We'll let him give a bit more light to that when we have the audio working. But on that, let's move to officers' reports. Don't have a ton, I guess, as chair, and I guess Commissioner Laughlin, you could add to this as well. But we've been working to develop this rat survey plus potential abatement. We're in the midst of trying to figure it out what the best approach is. But we've gotten about 50 responses to the survey that was sent out last month, this over the course of February. So next is to try to assess if we want any more responses or if that's sufficient to identify hotspots, because we also have the challenge of getting hotspots that are feasibly addressed by the parameters of how it can be done, which is related to signatures of neighbors and apartment buildings, kind of complicate that. But we're figuring that out, and hopefully in the next, I don't know, several weeks, we'll be able to release details of an in-person event to get people from the neighborhood around to pick up trash, learn about rats, unite of our hate in our hatred of rats and the rat population, and try to be productive about that. But as far as trying, I think that's the biggest thing. So let's move to what's next on the list. The vice chair, you got anything? It's okay if not.
Yeah, no, nothing from me this week or this month.
And secretary's report, Commissioner Shapiro, how you doing?
All right, treasurer's report. We currently have $1,866 in the bank. We have one, two, three, four checks outstanding, actually 6 checks outstanding that will take us down to about $66.26 left in the bank. I've continued my ordeal with both the Office of the Auditor and the ANC office. I think I've given them everything that they want, but that is in the past. I think I've given them everything they want. I'm going to give them one more week to fund us, and if they don't, we will go down. I'll have to go down and talk with Kent and tell him that we're going to be at a close down point at the end of March.
No, I know that it's been a big stress, and we've talked about this last couple of months on these meetings and personally. Sometime the next week we can have, Barney, maybe the two of us should convene again just to try to figure out what we can do and see if there's any more pressure we can push, because I don't exactly know what the deal has been either. For kind of transparency again, it seems that this has happened in the past as well, where just waiting for our allotments to be paid to us, sometimes they don't happen on the timeline we expect. And this time we don't exactly know what's going on because they've asked for documents that we've provided multiple occasions, and we're trying to pinpoint it, but it looks like there's help that can be, gets provided by other commissioners as well. We'll let everyone know.
At least the ANC office does make an attempt to help. I'm going to say this for the future treasurer, 10 months from now, regardless of what, of getting all the problems worked out, it still takes more time than it should, and that's not because of the ANC, but rather the Office of the Auditor and the Office of the ANC, their requirements. So instead of making our lives easier, they're making it more difficult. So
unfortunately, a familiar tune, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I appreciate that. So we almost have no money. We'll figure that out soon. To summarize.
But don't worry, Sean, I got you covered.
All good. But we are owed quite a bit. So once it gets resolved, which this has happened in the past, term or two ago, where it came down to where it was just aggravatingly slow to get our payments, and then they came and everything was good again. So hopefully that will be the case here. Treasurer, or excuse me, I did this out of order. Secretary's report, Commissioner Foskini.
No worries. Report, we have a normal meeting schedule for the month of March and should also be for the month of April. That means that this month, tonight is our full ANC meeting, Wednesday the 6th at 7 p.m. And then we have our normal committee schedule going forward for the month. So March 13th, Wednesday, March 13th at 7 p.m., we'll have the ABC and Public Safety Committee meeting. On Wednesday, March 20th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we will have our Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee meeting. And on Wednesday, March 27th at 7 p.m., we'll have our Public Services and the Environment Committee meeting. And then Wednesday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. on Zoom will be our next full ANC committee meeting. It is hereby publicly noticed.
Thank you. And now let's move to individual SMD and if you're a committee chair, committee updates. Let's do reverse order. And you can introduce yourself more properly, John. I hope you can hear me. We can't hear you. Okay, we got it halfway fixed, but now your audio's not working. We can't hear what you're saying, unfortunately. John, can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can. Okay, you can. I'm not sure what the deal is. Maybe if you unplug your headphones, I'm not sure. Is that a possibility, John? I guess you'd have to have computer speakers plugged in or connected. Well, we'll go to 1C08 while he's doing that. Commissioner Shapiro, any SMD updates? You're on mute. Sorry, John, we can't hear you still.
Okay. I have several things. First of all, the BZA case from concerning Meridian House has been remanded again back
Just a
to.
second. Sorry to interrupt. John, can you say that again? Can you hear? I think
No, I'm just saying hello because I didn't know if you could hear me.
Perfect. We're gonna come back to you, Marty.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Jones, introduction, any SMD updates?
Okay. Yes, I did that walk around thing for the business community for the up footsteps. Thanks for setting me up, Peter. It was cold out there. But it was fun. It was engaging. It reminded me of the time when I was with the Adams Morgan Day, and I organized a cook-off with the local restaurants, and the winner got a trip to the islands, one of the islands. And I mentioned that to the guy who was the representative of the business community that sponsored the walk around, but I don't think he took it. But I think it's a good idea we want to pursue. We might want to pursue as a commission. That would ingratiate us more so with the business community, because when it was the Adams Morgan organization that was a precursor, there was tenuous relationships between us and the business community. And I think it's always good to make sure that there's a smooth connection between us and the business community. So we might want to pursue that. Or two things. One, and I would if anyone has had some interaction between us and DPW, they planted a trash can outside at the school entrance to the parking lots, the school parking lot. They put the trash can there. Everybody celebrated. The trash can filled up in 2 days, and nothing's happened. And I don't want it to be an invitation to rats. So if anybody has a connection with DPW, I'd like it, if you could email it to me so I can put some heat under them to come up and empty this trash can. I'd appreciate it. The other thing is that I did testify at the Board of Zoning with regard to the uh, proposal for the building at fire station and police station at you know what I'm talking about, right, everybody? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It was, as it turned out, I'd signed up, and much to my advantage, I signed up late, and I didn't know therefore when I was going to be called, and I had to listen to every single person testify in order to be able to get the chance to testify. And as it happened, I was with a list of people, of course, who were opposed to it. And I had a chance to listen to the broad range of people, from the people who had technical difficulties with it, as well as those who spoke on behalf of the community. The reasons that they felt that they would be abused in one way or another by the sitting and the building of this building. And by the time it got to me, it settled my disagreements as well. I mentioned that I've been in the community in Adams-Morgan for like 50 years. And I've seen the changes here, but also I was reminded that in Ward 1, in the last 10 years, 50% of the African Americans have been moved out. 50%. That startled me. And it gave me a perspective on the significance of this building. It hardened it. And as everybody may know, that I was directly involved in preventing the people who lived on Seton Street, Northwest, from being thrown out of the buildings. Because at that time, it was during the time within 6 months of the right of first refusal for tenants in the city to be able to hold on to the housing. As you know well, that it succeeded. We kept people in the housing, and they were able to exercise their right to live in a place of their choice and their choosing. And when they decided, so they considered it was to their benefit. It was a housing opportunity that was provided for them that had not been provided before. But with the zoning, what I said with regard to the zoning was that I could clearly see now that this building is the death knell for the African American in this community, particularly, but certainly in this part of Ward 1. It's to move us out. And I mentioned too that when I first got to DC back in 1967, there was something called urban renewal, as it had to do what was going on in Southwest. But I also know too that Georgetown, as you may all already know, was all African American after the Civil War, and it was that was the case up until like the 1950s, the late 40s, I believe, and then it was a mass under both clean and dirty attempts to move all of the African Americans out of Georgetown, and that happened. So I'm saying this to say that I therefore could see that this building the building on the one we're talking about was a final attempt to see if we could move a significant number of the remainder of low and moderate income, particularly African American people, out of people out of Adams-Morgan. And I think that we, as a commission, should entertain this perspective when we consider further, because it's going to come up again, when we consider further the consideration of this building. At any rate, I'm because of my history with Seton Street, particularly, and with Ward 1, because I was Frank Smith, who was the Ward 1 councilman for a minute. I was his I was campaign manager for all intents and purposes, and so I got to know Ward 1 and all of its nooks and crannies. But anyway, that was my I put my voice against the building being built, and I just wanted to report that.
Thank you for sharing. Commissioner Shapiro. You're on mute again.
Would you say something?
No, you're good. He's on mute.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to piggyback on that too. While I didn't testify live, I previously submitted testimony in opposition to it. My opposition is based upon the fact the building is simply too large. And that overwhelming number of our neighbors here have that opinion. And there is no need, and there is no real need to have any for-profit or no need to have non-affordable housing there. The city has sufficient funds in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to do the entire building affordable, but make it a smaller scale building, obviously. There've been, that no one seems to be tagging on that thing. It will never get built at this point in time because there's so much market rate housing within, I'm going to say 30 blocks that's about to happen. And you got 800 units where the old Marriott was, 465 at the Universal building, 14th and U. They're just all around us are market rate housing. We need to have that entire building be affordable, but also have it be more appropriate for the neighborhood. And the city has the money for that, not new money, but existing money in the bank. And that's why I opposed it originally, and hopefully the zoning commission will agree with that. There's also no guarantee if we were to, if the city were to do it, that there would be affordable housing there. A private developer could just go with a shorter building, slightly shorter, but not short enough to fit in with the community. So that's one aspect of it. The second thing that has been going on is the Court of Appeals, the Meridian House development. The Court of Appeals had previously remanded it back to the BZA because BZA hadn't really looked at it. They just rubber stamped it. And the neighbors here hired a private lawyer. And now the Court of Appeals has once again remanded it back to BZA for them to take action. Hopefully BZA this time, and I know that years ago we came out against it. I think that maybe we should revisit it and come out against it again, the development. The neighbors here, there's a second part of it. Meridian House currently operates under as a school, believe it or not. And it's more of a wedding facility than anything else. And I'm hoping that within the month I can get a complaint that will come, that we can forward to our PCT committee, that maybe the entire commission can sign on to. And it's not, Jake, they say they're an education center, okay? Yeah, they do have some things, but it's principally used as a wedding facility. That's where they make their money. And that it really is the neighbors. I just had an instance right now where they had people, cars out there idling on Belmont Street for 30 minutes. Now, luckily I had the cell phone number of the manager, and he went out, and I'm assuming because I had to come to the meeting, he went out and said he was going to come out and take action to it. So the third thing that's been going on 1C08, and this is piggybacks with Jake, where there are 2 buildings being renovated.
I'm gonna keep the camera off while you're there.
Huh? I'm sorry. 2 buildings being renovated. And I've had complaints from neighbors about the excessive traffic there, construction traffic, during the drop off at school, because kids go down, parents walk their kids down from there. I also had an instance where I actually witnessed this myself, where they had vehicles idling, the dump trucks idling at 6:30. I went and talked with the supervisors on site for both buildings. It's one construction company, WT, White and Turner. They were very responsive. Department of Buildings had already been there about the early morning hours. And hopefully that's not happening again. Jake, you'll hear it if it happens. And they also were open to trying to put to have a specific flagman for the intersection during the morning hours. We'll see if they come through with it. All I can do is try in that instance. But if they once again start working before 7, I think we need to pursue DOB closing them down until they have a better grasp of what's going on. They'll change overnight if DOB closes them down, because the cost to the contractor is astronomical. That's it. Aren't we happy I finally got to do something for my ANC, for my SMD?
Thanks for all that. Commissioner Pasquini.
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner Wood. First off, I'll do neighborhood update, and then I'll do ABC and Public Safety Committee. Neighborhood update, Barney, our Commissioner Shapiro already mostly covered it. The folks know there's a lot of construction happening in 1C07 right now. There's the Pepco construction on Ontario Road as it intersects down with Florida, and we've gotten a couple of updates from Pepco about that continuing. It should be wrapping up in the next couple of months here, but it's going to continue to be disruptive to folks in that area for at least a couple more months. There is then a little bit further up Ontario with the intersection with Colorama, the 2 Jubilee construction projects. As Commissioner Shapiro referenced, the Murray Reed Elementary School has asked for another crossing guard there to help with kids. And so we put them in touch with the Jubilee Housing folks and the construction manager, and we're hoping that they will approve that so kids can cross that corner a little bit more safely. Then there was the issue of the idling dump truck super early, and folks have been working on that. They're no longer doing that. They were, Barney, you'll appreciate this. We're literally parked on the sidewalk right in front of my bed, like 10 feet away from me, idling at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was very personally impacted by that one. So thank you for your advocacy around that, Commissioner Shapiro. I know others have been working on it too. A couple of the building HOA boards have been getting in touch with them, and hopefully we'll get through the peak of this construction. This really is kind of the peak of these 2 projects right now. So hopefully we'll get through it really soon. And then we'll have some nice new buildings there for the neighborhood. There are 2 more construction projects on Champlain Street, kind of approaching Euclid, where construction should be starting pretty soon. One just south of the Line Hotel, same side of the road, and then one directly across the street from the Line Hotel on the opposite side of Champlain. So just heads up to folks in the ANC that those build projects should be starting fairly soon for both of those. And then lastly, there was an incident this last month, really unfortunately, where a builder of a unit right on the intersection of Calorama and Champlain dug too deep without the appropriate safety mechanisms in place, and the building right next to them started to actually lean into the pit that they had created. DOB was called within hours of discovering that. Came out, closed down the construction site, brought in their own people over the weekend very quickly, braced the back of the building, poured concrete into it. And I am sure that this will now result in extensive litigation. So we'll work with both of the buildings on either side and the construction manager to see what we can do to make sure that they make those buildings right, and also that doesn't just end up a pit for time and all eternity, but that we actually move forward with with construction continuing there at some point, but with a construction that is appropriately working to ensure the safety of the neighbors and everyone around them. So those are some of the big developments in the ANC. We'll note that crime in the neighborhood seems to have really leveled off a lot after kind of the peak last summer. It was very scary there for a bit. It has gotten better. The numbers are looking a lot better in the neighborhood over the last few months, so that's good. There still is a lot of porch theft, a lot of breaking in and getting boxes, and and some serious crimes are still an issue in the neighborhood too, especially around theft of automobiles and that sort of thing. So it doesn't end, but glad at least that it seems to be getting better. And so that leads us to the ABC and Public Safety Committee meeting next week, where we will get a crime stats update from the police precinct. And we will also, we've had 2 new applications for liquor licenses. So we will go over those at the ANC meeting next week as well. I'll send out a detailed agenda to the email list, to the neighborhood email list by the end of the evening tonight with the full agenda. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Laughlin.
I just wanted to ask you a question.
No large updates. So as Commissioner Wood mentioned earlier, we do have a survey that we're asking residents and visitors as well to fill out with about rat activity. The goal with that is so that we will have Department of Health come and do a walkthrough of the community with us. So if we can target particular areas where there's a lot of rat activity, then we can get Department of Health to note that, but also give any tips or advice about anything in the situation. I will remind folks that with Department of Health and their rodent control, that is mostly focused on single family homes or buildings with 3 or fewer units. So if you are in an apartment building or a condo building with 4 or more, you really do have to work through your building management to abate rats. But part of our goal here is to help residents learn more information about that. So if you could fill that, I encourage everyone to fill it in. It's mostly based on alleys, but there are some open-ended questions where you can make notes of any activity that you've seen. No updates for PSE, except that we do have an outstanding grant that we need to fund. It's the DC Archaeological Society, because they have created some beautiful posters and postcards that they're ready to print. So they need funding that we approved back in December to print that. I will follow up with Commissioner Chaparro and Commissioner Wood to sort of see what movement we can get on that. And then other than that, no specific updates for the SMD. I know we have a lot of community members here who I think wanted to hear more about the bus plan. I know certainly from my SMD, received a lot of emails and questions about it. So I look forward to getting to that part of the night.
Can anybody hear me?
We can, but we're going to need you to mute.
Jake, excuse me, Linda.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Jake a question. I remember when the Pepco came to us about the renovation, they promised on a regular basis, I think monthly basis, to provide a cleanup to come down and do a cleanup thing so that it would trash unnecessary trash wouldn't accumulate. Do you know, has that been a problem?
I don't know, but we can talk more about it outside of this meeting.
Okay.
Who's next? Commissioner Stevens, all you.
Hello. Okay, so it's been very quiet in my SMD, but my constituents would definitely like to know more about that stretch of Ontario Road that's becoming one way or potentially becoming one way. Some were concerned and others just simply want to know more about it. So once we get to that point, I'm hoping that someone can speak to that and we can have somewhat of a discussion there. And also in regards to 1617 U Street, I'll just say really, really quickly, I don't want to take too much time, but as you know, I did vote for our resolution. I thought it was fantastic in many ways, and I just want to make sure that all those bells and whistles, the environmental stuff, the higher levels of affordability for the units, et cetera, stays in place should this project move forward. But I do have some concerns similar to Commissioner Shapiro. And as far as Commissioner Jones is concerned, I do not have that depth of experience that he has, and that knowledge that he has. But it does sound like a fairly serious thing that we need to maybe look into a bit before we go into the next phases of the project. And then another thing, I'm starting to get a little bit of cold feet about the public land aspect of it. I didn't really consider that before, but I guess I'm just starting to think, well, there is an unlimited amount of public land for us to use, say for schools or whatever, should we need that. So I kind of wonder if we should start thinking in terms of, is it a good idea to privatize, even a certain amount of that public land. So there's that. And I'm with Commissioner Shapiro that it may be that the entire building can be affordable. It can be maybe a bit of a smaller scale, but all affordable. And I know Councilmember Louis George is working on some social housing and had a discussion with Councilmember Nadeau. So I would like to learn a little bit more about what they talked about, and if we can maybe I don't know, just think about that. So anyway, so that's all I'm thinking on that. But I just think maybe we should dig a little deeper, maybe get a little more in depth on things as it moves forward. So that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Wy.
I don't think I have anything that anyone else hasn't already discussed. So I will, and no one in my ANC has really raised any issues that I need to bring here tonight. So I will pass on.
103, there's always stuff going on. I think one thing that came through that's interesting, we've voted in past support for it before, is the 1840 Calorama. It's a big building that has been relatively neglected, relatively doing a lot of work in that sentence. They got the permits, I'm pretty sure. That's at least what the emails I got said. So it seems that they are prepared to go ahead and potentially renovate that property, which has some pretty fascinating history behind it, if you haven't heard before on these meetings. Short version, Alexander Graham Bell's wife ran a school for the deaf there, among other things. So hopefully that moves forward. That would be good. Some other things, the performance oversight recently, it's in the process of ending. That season's shifting to budget oversight, but I've testified a couple times. We're planning on doing so for budget stuff as well, as just SMD representative. I've also been on the meetings for 1617U. Don't want to open discussion. It's not an item on our agenda tonight. We voted on resolution before. There's no real opportunity for movement at this point, as far as I can tell in this meeting. But I testified in January, and I missed one meeting, but there have been five-hour hearings so far, and I think a sixth is planned. So I've been to just under 20 hours of meetings, which had a lot of public input from a lot of perspectives. It's been really interesting and learned quite a bit. A lot of thoughts on it. But I guess the short point in terms of what we could do in the future, there's no project being proposed. It's a proposed map amendment to make potential projects have higher capacity of density and height and things. I've been trying to do my best to work with Councilmember Nadeau's office to potentially get us great weight in the future in the event that a map amendment would occur, and if there was some sort of project proposed, so that we'd hopefully have more weight in affecting what that looks like. That's not something that's happened yet. I have no idea where that's going, but if any movement happens on that front, I will definitely be letting everyone know so we can see what potential opportunities exist for us to take voice on any hypothetical projects that might take place in the future. Besides that, just waiting for spring to come. I think that the people that I volunteered with in Calorama Park in the garden are starting to prepare to do that. So if anyone's interested, please reach out. Happy to get you some gloves and some dirt on your hands because we're going to start weeding and watering and all of that in the next few weeks. Next up, Commissioner Dixon.
I have no updates in my area, but I did have a question. I did have two people reach out to me There's a small park. It's actually across the street from my building. It's called the Carolyn Lorente Memorial Park. It's very, very tiny, but it's like kind of unsightly and muddy. And I didn't know if anyone knew off the top of their heads if that was part of Parks Department. Was that on their agenda to kind of clean up in the next year or so? Does anyone remember that by chance?
I'll talk to you. So I've got the very small detail. I got the Google Maps like label on that because I didn't realize it was a park until I saw the legislation that someone sent. But
It's
is
so tiny.
it's very small. I've talked to Brian a bit about it before, and maybe you too, Kristen, I forget, but I agree that we should try to find a way to clean it up. I have ideas we can discuss and reach out to community members nearby because I think it could look good. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
I don't know if that's all.
All right. Commissioner Michelson Horowitz.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, I didn't realize that was the name of the park, but some neighbors have cleaned up that spot. It's, behind the benches in front of the that little triangle by the 7-Eleven. And some folks have done some private cleanup there. But glad to get clarity that it's a DPR park. And yeah, in my SMD, if folks are having any issues with construction of the Adams School, please continue to let me know. I continue to forward complaints to the DCPS contact. They did, after several letters, agree to start at 8 a.m. on Saturdays instead of 7 a.m., which, if you can believe, they were starting at 7 a.m. on Saturdays. And so that kind of advocacy does work. And I really encourage folks, even if it's just a form letter that, 10 neighbors can send, it works. I am also working to get replacement trash cans on 19th Street. The trash cans that were on the west side of the street are now behind construction barriers, and there's been a lot more trash and dog poop left on the street. Yeah, that's the big stuff. There's been water construction. We're at the end of this long process of connecting to the new 8-inch main, and checking out houses for lead pipes. Just had my own property checked by DC Water. No lead here. So if you have not filled out the form, if you are not on the list, please let me know and I'll connect you. And then if you haven't gotten the rat survey, yes, please fill it out. It's in the comments here. But it's around the neighborhood as well. So that's all for me.
Got through everybody. All right, thanks everyone. So we'll move to public comments. I saw at least one that I can address quickly. I think it was also addressed by Commissioner Balskini. Scooters, as far as I remember, I think in October 2022 is when DC legislation came into action where legally they have to be locked up and they have to have locks provided. So it's definitely been discussed, at least at the city level. I forget if Nancy discussed it. But thanks for the patience of everyone who waited. And let's go in order of the hands that appear. First up would be Zach. And just a reminder, I have about 2 minutes or so to get your comments through. I won't be super strict about it, but if it seems like you're meandering, I'll try to direct you to a closing point. Welcome, Zach. You're on mute if you're not aware already. Hello?
What's going on?
Just waiting for first public comments. Just
Regarding,
has to make the switch to the panelist is all. Sometimes there's a lag. Welcome, Zach. We're ready whenever you are.
me, something I'm missing. What did you say?
Zach is going to comment, public commentary now.
Public comment regarding what?
Anything they want.
Oh, I see.
Within reason.
No, I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that Margaret particularly was concerned about public land being reverted for private use. And that was one of the issues that rose to the fore. But the most important one was adequate notice. And this is where a significant part of the challenge was to the providing of the zoning for this building. people did not feel that there was adequate notice, and I agree with him. And that requested that the Board of Zoning stop the proceedings so far at this point so that adequate notice could be made, because there was enough people around the immediate area that were saying they didn't know that this whole issue was coming up, and they didn't get a chance to respond. So at a very minimum, they wanted to start the process all over again in order to be able to give people adequate notice. But other than that, I don't really have any other comments.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, Zach, I think that we're getting audio from you now. So if you're ready, the floor is yours. And if not, we'll switch to someone else and hope that you can get that resolved. Can you hear me, Zach?
Hello?
Hi, you're good.
We
Welcome.
can hear you.
Oh, good. That's make me happy now. How are you?
Doing well.
I'm Zakaria Ibrahim, representing 2406 18th Street. I believe we have the blocker now. And I was wishing to meet with you to talk about temporary license during the grand opening. I don't know how you feel about that. And also, I would like to let you know that 2406 is not gonna be a clubby. The part owner, who is a jazz player, so he would play jazz most of the time, himself, with a background music, whatever, but it is not gonna be more than a lounge. And I will appreciate if you will have time to set a meeting for us soon, because I'm about to get the basic license for them. And I wish, if you're not gonna mind, to give them a temporary license or to agree about temporary license until we see if we're gonna have to set some kind of deal with you guys or voluntary agreement. Because I believe I work the other case for the old tenant. I forgot the name of the business, but they didn't do good and they went out of business. Glory. It was Glory, I think. Yes. From my memory, it was Mr. Addy. I represent them with Mr. James, which I didn't see him with you guys. I'm old and he knows me for so long, but I never have the honor to meet none of you. I'm sorry, forgive me, but we can meet at the restaurant if you like to see how we sit it, what exactly menu we have, and all of that. I know this is your concern.
That's great. I'll hand it over to Commissioner Palestini. I think that we're already on top of this.
Okay.
Zach, thank you so much for coming. These are we handle liquor license applications in our ABC and Public Safety Committee.
Yes.
That I chair that committee. And we are going to be meeting next Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom. So we would be more than happy to have you join us for that committee and to talk about.
I appreciate that. Okay.
So I'm going to put my email and my phone number in the chat, and then you can go ahead and reach out to me, and we'll put you on the agenda Wednesday.
Do you mind if you just give me a phone number, and my assistant, she's gonna do this better than me. I just do the talk and process most of the time. I'm not good in computer and emailing, but I have staff which is can take care of that. If you don't mind, just give me a phone number and name, and you're gonna receive a call from my office to arrange this, or to get a link, or to be in the calendar, whatever you wish.
Yes. This is a public meeting, so I'm going to give you my my Google Voice number, and that is 202
Okay.
642
642
5474.
5474. Okay.
You got it, sir. And my name is Jake Falaschini, Faleskchini.
I see it in the screen. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Zach. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
I appreciate your respect, and thank you guys. Nice meeting you, and we're gonna meet in person.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
investing in our neighborhood, Zach. We
You look
appreciate
good, all of you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next on the list of hands looks like is David.
Hello, commissioners. I'd like to offer a few words about the Columbia Road bus and bus priority project, if this is the right moment for that.
It is up to you. We will have, if there's no voting type item, but we'll have kind of an open discussion among commissioners, inviting public comment later in the meeting. We'll probably have more opportunity to speak longer winded if you want that, dare I provide it. You have to wait until it'll be later in the meeting, so you can speak now or wait if you want. It's up to you. And
I'm here. Let's keep everything flowing quickly, in the interest of respecting your time, and won't be long. Okay, so I live over in Clydesdale Place. I'm in 1C05 in Commissioner Stevens's district, and I'm on Columbia Road every day. And I'd like to thank the ANC for its work on the Columbia Road project, and especially this commission, prior commissions, for shifting a bus-centric design into a much broader solution that also protects bicyclists and pedestrians. Columbia it's a vital east-west bike link and bus route, and it's recognized under Move DC as part of the bike and bus transportation networks. A little bit of background. The bus lanes on Lanier aren't a substitute for Columbia Road facilities. They are protected. They're far away from retail destinations, and they came about through the work of past ANC 1C commissioners, and they were always intended as a short-term fix until the Columbia Road protected bike lanes could open. I think you'll hear a claim tonight from other commenters that bike lanes might injure local businesses, and that claim is false. All over this city, we've seen that bike lanes are good for merchants, for residents, and connectivity. And the empirical evidence on bike lanes is clear. There's a slew of economic studies that find businesses do as well or better wherever bike lanes are installed. There's a good study from the city of Toronto looking at Bloor Street. I know Bloor. I biked there, I've walked there. It looks a lot like Columbia. And what happened on Bloor is what will happen here. Businesses flourished. The same over in New York on Skillman Avenue. There's even a relatively new meta-analysis from two transportation researchers at UC Davis who looked at 23 different studies across North America, and they concluded, quote, the available evidence suggests that fears of bikes harming businesses are unfounded, and local governments can indeed invest in bicycles and pedestrians without regrets. So I'm hoping we won't have any regrets. I hope that the commission will continue its support now that DDOT moves towards construction. Thank you, folks.
Thanks for your comments. Next is Janine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. This is Jeannie. I live in one of the buildings behind the Adams School. Thank you, Daniel. I'm one of your constituents who emailed you about 7 a.m. Saturday truck beeping. So thank you for your efforts there. We have had some new neighbors move into our building within the past few months, and they are asking me what is the best way to receive updates on the construction.
It's a good question. Commissioner Michelson.
Yeah, there is a DCPS landing page. I'll put that in the comments here with all the presentations and meetings recorded. But if you also send me their information, I can make sure that they're put on any updates that I send. So yeah, please, I'll put that in the comments, but also send me the information.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for your comments. Kristen Barton from Adams Morgan Partnership and Business Improvement District. Welcome, Kristen. How are you doing?
Hey, everyone. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
All
It
right.
always takes a minute to get elevated. So I wanted to just update folks a little bit on some of our programming. We wrapped up our date nights activities in the end of February, and that was a huge success. We just concluded with a special event at Lamont Royale. It was a singles event with DC Frey. It had a great turnout, so I think we're going to do a second one of those because we actually had more people register than we could accommodate. So look for another date later in March at Johnny Pistola's. So we're going to extend date nights a little bit longer. We have our annual meeting coming up on Tuesday morning at 8:30. It's going to be at Venture X. It's a breakfast. It's open to the ANC commissioners and to the public, of course. And we'll be showing our annual report video representing all of our work in 2023. So that's that'll be a lot of fun. And then later in April, we have the Adams Morgan Art Walk kicking off. We are now recruiting artists that we partner with businesses, and they put their art in the business windows. We do this activity. We started it during the pandemic. I think this will be the 4th year. And we work with DC Art Center, and they put the call out to their artist community, and then we match them up with businesses. So it's a really fun event. It's a really low budget event, but it brings a lot of media attention. It brings a lot of people to the neighborhood to come and look at the art. And of course, all of the art in the windows is for sale. So you can look for more information about that coming up soon. But if you're an artist or know an artist who would like to display their work, please let DC Art Center know, because they're coordinating all of that. The Spring Porch Fest, which I think you're probably all looking forward to, is going to be Saturday, May 4th. We are going before the Mayor's Special Events Task Group later this month, and I think there's an agenda item. We would love to have a letter of support from the ANC again to close 18th Street for Porch Fest. We did it for the first time this past fall, and the street closure really made a big difference in being in allowing people to really spread out. It was a much safer event. So we're hoping to add the pedestrian zone street closure to Porch Fest, both for May 4th and also for November 2nd. So those will be the two dates for this year. And the call for musicians went out today, and also I think the call for porch hosts also went out today. So if you play in a band or would like to be considered, please let us know. Or if you have a porch that you think would be a great addition, please let us know about that too. The more porches we have, the more musicians we can have, of course. And that's from 2 to 6 on May 4th. The Bike to Work Day is also coming up. That's on May 17th. That's a Friday morning. We could always use a few extra volunteers that morning. Our pit stop is in Unity Park from 7:30 to 9:30. So if you're interested in volunteering, let me know. I will put my contact info in the chat for volunteers for Bike to Work Day. And it's a fun event. It's, a couple of hours on that Friday morning. And if the weather's nice, it's really fun. If the weather's not so nice, it's not so fun. But it is rain or shine. And then our movie nights are also coming up in May. And those are going to start on May 21st. Those are on Tuesday nights at Marie Reed Field. The movies start about a half an hour after dark. And the theme this year is going to be sports in recognition of the Summer Olympics. So more to come on the movie nights. I just want to put a pin on your calendars that those will start up on May 21st on Tuesday nights, and they'll run through the end of June. Thanks so much, and I think that's it for me.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Moving along, next hand up is Sasha. Welcome, Sasha. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm actually here with my partner Alexander, and he has
some feelings that he'd like to share about the.
Oh no, I just wanted to, we're residents of 1707 Columbia Road, and have been here for a few years. And just wanted to share our support of the Columbia Road bicycle lane project, support the idea of removing parking spots for bike lanes and buses. A lot more people are going to be using them, and as the other person mentioned earlier, that supports businesses. It actually increases business activity. The only thing I just wanted to note was that we'd also be interested in in support of us seeing about potentially expanding density elements as we're removing parking spots, because as we're pulling away mobility to broader areas and increasing mobility within a denser corridor, I feel like it would be in the interest of the neighborhood to increase our density options so we have more housing and more workspace available. So just wanted to share that.
Appreciate it. Just for clarity, because you're a bit far from the microphone, support for the Columbia Bus Priority Project was being expressed there. Next up is Sutherland.
Yeah, I will balance out the support for the project and suggest that while I'm happy with efficient bike lanes and all that, I think removing parking on Columbia Road is the last thing that we need, particularly those of us with families with little children. Getting in and out of our apartments on Columbia Road is challenging enough. So I don't know the status of the plan, if there's some reference to the impact on resident parking and some sense of what the trade-off is here. I would like to further explore that. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And we do have it later on the agenda item later on tonight's meeting. So as commissioners, we can discuss. And these comments are very helpful to kind of inform that discussion and give it some direction. Drod Allen from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations. Welcome, Drod. How are you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
We're good.
So how's everyone doing? Not going to be long. I have a couple of updates. I'm going to start with the 6th annual Fit DC Her Story 5K. That's going to take place this Saturday, March the 9th. Registration opens at 9 a.m. The 5K starts at 10 a.m. There will also be a kids dash. That's going to be at 9:30 a.m. So please arrive early to pick up materials for that. This will be held at Freedom Plaza, located at 1455 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest downtown. And yeah, we'd love to see you down there. I'll be down there in attendance. Also going to let you guys know an update from DPW sweep season. DPW they have started the residential street sweeping March 4th, Monday, and that's going to go all the way up until October 31st. During this time, parking restrictions will be enforced on signed streets. Parking is generally prohibited for 2-hour intervals between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. or 12:30 p.m. between up until 2:30 p.m. during sweeping hours. Alternate side parking is required on streets where parking is allowed on only one side. To raise awareness, DPW will issue warnings to vehicles parked on signed streets from March 1st to March 7th. After that date, $45 fine will be issued to violators. DPW's street sweeping program also provides routine, unscheduled street sweeping throughout district neighborhoods and on sections of aerial roadways. For more information on this DPW street sweeping program, please visit dpw.dpw.gov dc.gov for any additional information, or feel free to reach out to myself if you need any clarity on anything. Those are going to be my updates for the day. I can take any questions if anybody may have any.
Any questions, commissioners? Always good to hear from you, Gerard. Have a good night. Thanks for coming by. And it looks like that concludes public comments, or the general public comments or public announcements. So we'll move on to the regular agenda, or to the rest of the agenda. Before getting to the consent agenda, I would like to move that we make an addition to the consent agenda, which is the item that Ms. Barden mentioned. May 4th, November 2nd, sending a letter of support for closing 18th or opening it up to pedestrians. Exact same thing we did last year. It's happened multiple times. If any single commissioner wants to discuss it fully, I'll put it on the regular agenda, but in the sake of time, I'm moving to put it on the consent agenda with the other two consent items. Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Voskini, thank you. All those in favor of the addition, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. So consent agenda, 3 items. Didn't link to the minutes, but everyone's received the minutes. If everyone's okay with that, I'll move to pass the consent agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda passes 9-0. Moving on to the regular agenda. So, point of clarification. This is from ABC. Did ABC pass support for this, or is this just something that is ABC thematic? Okay, so we would need a second, just making sure. Probably trivial detail, but Commissioner Pasquini.
Sure. So folks probably remember that about 6 months or so ago, we received a application for a Brazilian restaurant in the old sushi restaurant location on 18th Street. And I'm forgetting that crossroad, Commissioner Wood. It's in your district. Belmont, yes. On the northwest corner of that street. Very normal, simple restaurant license application. Unfortunately, they were going through securing the building and the space, and they ran into some issues with the space itself not actually fitting what they needed. And so instead, they've decided to take a lease out on a different property, also on 18th Street. The name is now going to be Barcana. And it is the exact same plan for the same Brazilian restaurant as we heard before, with all of the same attachments and everything that we heard before. I didn't feel like this needed to go through committee when we already passed it unanimously the last time that it came from committee. And so we're bringing it directly to the commissioners. It is a very normal liquor license application for a restaurant, Class C, normal restaurant license. When it came before the commission last time in a different location, same owner, same concept, same everything, we passed it unanimously. And so I would ask for support for this liquor license from the commission now as well.
What's the new address?
New address?
Yeah.
Is 2412 18th Street Northwest.
Delicious.
It's a few houses down, pretty much, basically, right?
Yep. It's just like five places down on the left from where it was supposed to be before.
Jake, I don't remember. Did that have a entertainment endorsement?
I don't believe that he said that it was going to have any. It might just be like a little bit of like light, like acoustic guitar or something like that, but it was not anything major.
But there was an entertainment endorsement on it or not? You don't remember? Does the current application have an entertainment endorsement?
Check it out. Let's see. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I take that back. Requesting entertainment to provide live entertainment inside. So yeah, they have that requested on the application for Barcana.
I think it's just because they're transferring over the old one. But when we spoke with him about it, remember, it's one of these that like they're carrying over an old license that has attachments on it. And so when we spoke with him about it at the application, we asked him whether or not he was planning to do any music, and he said, maybe he'd do some like light guitar music or something during normal restaurant hours, but nothing late or outdoors or anything like that.
Yeah, I remember the business model being trying to be kind of an upscale-ish restaurant, and it didn't really match with
Yeah,
the
they were
abstract that we'd often
just
looking at.
comparing himself to like Tail Up Goat and like that style of restaurant. Like they're really going for like a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. It's been a bit, but I've talked to the owner. He used to run a place in DuPont on 18th. Got out of that so he could focus solely on this project.
That's
And
right.
both have Brazilian partners, so we bonded over that a bit. And he's, I think, gone to Brazil to try to get furniture from Rio for the place. So sad to see them get delayed, but hopefully this will move forward. And it sounds like everything's pretty much an exact replica of what we already have supported. So, other commissioners, comments, questions? Any in the public?
I'm maybe overly concerned about entertainment endorsements without really getting into what we're agreeing to.
I think again, this is another example, Commissioner Shapiro, or we can work that out in the settlement agreement with the establishment.
All right,
So,
you know my views.
yep, totally.
Acoustic, yes. Amplified,
Yep.
Any other comments, questions? All right, I'll move to support this. It seemed good last time, seems like it's the same this time. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. All those in favor of supporting this?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Support passes 9-0. Next, moving to Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee. Item that we moved from last month to discuss this month. Commissioner Stevens, your resolution. Want to give us a brief reintroduction?
Yes, very brief. We've been round and round with this, I think. So basically, like Commissioner Wood just said, we were going to vote on this resolution, but then you all, my fellow commissioners, had a few questions and concerns. I went back to the drawing board. I spoke to a number of people, and then I believe I answered all of those questions and concerns. If not, please let me know. Otherwise, I would just like to submit it for a vote. And of course, I also sent a link to you all to the actual revised resolution for you to look over. So anyway, I suggest that we vote.
Thank you for that. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns? I know you put a lot of work towards this, Commissioner Stevens. I really do appreciate that.
No problem. Important issue.
Anyone intend? Commissioner Pasquini, we'll go to you first.
Just wanted to note, we had a very long discussion about this at last month's meeting. So if any members of the community want to learn a little bit more about the commissioner's thoughts on this particular issue, feel free to reference back to our YouTube video from last month's ANC meeting.
If only we could get more people to rewatch our past meetings and learn things about our views on hyper-specific issues. Appreciate that. Anyone in attendance, questions, comments? All right. Yeah, I'll move, unless anyone else wants to. Move to pass this resolution. Get out there. Can I get a second?
Second.
I don't think it needs one. It was passed from committee. All those in favor of supporting this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 9-0. Next, I guess I'll switch the order here. No, let's just go with this order. Informational discussion on Columbia Road. Bus priority projects, we've already had some public comments on it. There's no need for us to do anything, of course, if we change our minds and someone wants to make a motion to see if the commission's in support of taking action. We're of course free to do so, but opportunity to add any additional comments, just to clarify some points that kind of have been addressed in the chat. At the stage of this project where the Department of Transportation has released what's called a notice of intent, so they're closer to the final stages of actually doing construction and breaking stuff and fixing it again, making it look nice. So this is essentially the final opportunity for public input to help kind of address kind of fine tuning, I should say. There's always the possibility to completely I suppose, refurbish what's going on, but that's very unlikely because there's been several iterations of public input. So this is trying to make sure that there's the closest thing to consensus as possible going forward. A lot of people have shared pretty different views on this, so I really appreciate that. And this would be another opportunity for commissioners and attendees alike to add, their additional thoughts on this. Commissioners, you got anything? All right, we'll go to attendees. It looks like Barbara's up first. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah. Hi, thanks. Hi, Linda. Thanks for emailing with me. So I wanted to, I don't know how many people in the community became aware of this until very recently. I was not aware of this project until a few weeks ago. And I talked with some businesses and I talked with some neighbors and I talked with I live in the Calverton, 1673 Columbia Road. And a lot of people were not aware of it. I don't think it's gotten media attention, unlike the project on Connecticut Avenue. And I'd also like to note that that project was unveiled in 2019 and they're still negotiating it. And this project was unveiled in late 2021 and it's at the point of construction. And I'm just wondering, the communication outreach as described by Kevin Harrison doesn't seem like it was direct to the community. It was posters dropping off one flyer in my building of 75 plus units. And I just wonder if there's a possibility to extend the comment period by 30 to 45 days so we can have more meetings and have more discussions. That's sort of a general comment. And then a specific comment is I'm really confused and concerned about the loss of sidewalk access for people who are used to being dropped off and picked up in front of their apartment buildings. That we have older people, people with mobility issues, and I don't understand how this is good in that sense. When walking 8 feet will mean you're going to have to walk 60 to 70 feet to go to the corner to get picked up. So that's a real big concern. Someone, actually my neighbor mentioned earlier, people with family have a similar, young children have similar issues. So that's the gist of it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I will address the first thing. Other commissioners might be better suited for other points. Well, I might address the last thing too. As far as public notice, I mean, it's a difficult thing pretty much with every issue for commissions. We don't have much money. We're not paid. I would love it if every single issue was somehow broadcast to every single person. They're made aware of it. That'd be great. If anyone has ideas of how to do that, absolutely welcome it. If anyone has time or energy that they're willing to dedicate to helping get the broader community more aware of what we do, that would be great. It's not always easy. We have, I think on our website, had this posted for some time. It's an obscure website, I'm aware, but we do our best to have that as well as other mechanisms like groups.io, just like the former listserv, to try to make as many people in the public aware that we've been discussing this. Also, just going straight to DDOT and sending emails or letters is a quicker way than going through the commission to have us formulate something, vote on it, and submit it officially. So that's, I think, part of the point of the NOI process is so that people can do that as well without having to go through more proper channels like commissioners. Anyone else have any comments just in response to that? We can move on as well. There's a lot there. Okay, let's see. Kevin O'Brien, welcome. You're next up.
Hello, can folks hear me? Okay, I see a little thing saying, all right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin O'Brien. I work for the Washington Area Bicyclists Association, but I am speaking more tonight just as a resident. I live on 18th Street and just want to express enthusiasm for the project. I think there's a lot to be gained by sort of transit and bike and reorienting some of the bus stops and hopefully fixing some of the intersections. I think there's a lot to like in the project. As with bike projects across the city, across the region, we know parking has continued to be a concern. The loss of parking, but as another member of the public said, the studies, the research is pretty clear that there's a lot to be at least from the business side, that business actually flourish. And I think one of the sort of maybe under appreciated pieces of the project. Yes, there is going to be a net loss of parking spots, but I think the shift of the parking that remains to be more oriented towards, I think, the kind of use that Columbia Road sees. I go by, at walking the road, and the idea of seeing, somebody parked for several hours, right, in the same spot. Well, that doesn't help the business, right? They need that space to sort of be churned, right? If that's for their customers. If you're a resident, presumably you're not parking directly on Columbia Road anyway, because it's, most of that parking is time limited or paid. And so I think there's the idea of adding more commercial zones, pick up drop off points as part of this project, I think is going to be really, really transformative. Most of the sort of congestion and backups that I sort of see, anecdotally, right? It's a lot of just trucks trying to drop off things at these businesses. It's, people trying to pick up or drop off, Ubers and Lyfts and, paratransit vans and all of the rest. And I think this project is actually going to make a lot of that better. Yes, it's going to be a few parking spots, that are currently metered and whatnot. But I think that it's a fair trade-off to make it a more, just a more easily accessible route. Make Adams Morgan a better place to get around. As somebody who bikes and walks and scooters up and down frequently, it is even as an extremely a very confident certainly in the sort of upper percentiles of people who are confident riding in the streets, makes me a little nervous, right? And that's sad to say, that on the street that is directly adjacent to where I live. And yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. I think it's the ability to knit that project beyond Adams Morgan, getting into Columbia Heights, really improving that east-west connectivity is going to be really huge. So I'm really excited about the project, and I hope that we can that some of the concerns will end up being alleviated once they sort of see some of the improvements up and running. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. If it's Barbara, your hand's up again. I don't know if you meant to follow up to your comments, but if that's the case, I have a moment to do so.
I think they're two different Barbaras.
Barbara, I apologize. I should pay better attention. Welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I just posted in the chat most of what I'm trying to say. I wasn't sure I'd get a chance to speak. My husband and I live in the Wyoming condominium at 2022 Columbia Road. And we've had a lot of discussion in our buildings, two buildings combined with a lobby, and with the adjacent buildings. We have a lane between us, which is a fire lane that accesses the Adams School parking lot, which is under renovation. And there are a lot of construction trucks there. That's temporary, obviously, but when that's completed, there will be vehicles going to park in the parking lot, going through that lane, and we always have to watch out for vehicular traffic, both for Adams School, for garbage trucks, for delivery trucks, servicing 3 buildings through that lane. It's a dead end lane. It's a fire lane. It's a mess. But if we have we feel as residents that there's absolutely no need to make any changes to the bus lanes or the bike lanes in the 2000 block of Columbia Road. We can't speak for the rest of Columbia, but having elevated bus platforms constructed where we currently have none would slow down the buses that currently are able to move on through, and make it more difficult for people who have mobility issues, such as elderly people using walkers or wheelchairs, or people with infants in strollers or more than one child that they're carrying along with them to get on buses and off of buses, and also to traverse the lane. Where they're already looking out for traffic going in and out of the lane, and they also then would have to look out for bicycles just hurtling along this protected bike lane as well. And they can't see around the parked cars because they're now sticking out into the street. And on the other side of the street, that's the only way that you can have deliveries, delivery trucks or vendor trucks or garbage trucks stop. So if you have a protected bike lane as well as a bus lane, you're going to have delivery trucks in the middle of the street and garbage trucks in the middle of the street because there's no place else for them to go because there's no alley behind that side of the street at all. And it's going to be a mess. And it's only residential. There are no businesses. And there's no problem. The traffic flows nicely. The bikes flow nicely, and there's nothing to fix. So we just feel that there's no need to make any change whatsoever in the 2000 block of Columbia Road. And we are writing letters to Mr. Harrison, whose presentation we attended, many of us did, to that effect, but we don't feel heard. We don't feel listened to. And we'd like to make sure that you all hear us. And I think that there are others here from our building besides me on this meeting, and I appreciate your listening. Thank you.
I want to thank you as well, and hope you do know that you are being heard. Not the first time that we've, as a commission and as committees as well, done our best to really listen to a lot of very contrasting but really informative perspectives on this. Next up, I believe, is Sean.
Hello, can you hear me?
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Yeah, my name is Sean Fenty. I own Fleet Feet Sports on Columbia Road. We've served the community there. It will be 40 years, June 8th. Our mission is community fitness and health. We're a running specialty store, and I personally ride my bicycle to work every day. Ride thousands of miles a year on my bicycle. I've raced bicycles in this community for 40 years. So that's just a little bit about me and the perspective from which I speak. I'd like to echo the comments by both Barbaras here tonight. I just found out about this project this week. A neighbor sort of brought it to my attention and dropped off a flyer. And so I reviewed the parameters of the project today. And yeah, I'm very concerned. I see a lot of disruption in it. I think that where I have seen comparable projects, you're dealing with a lot more space. Columbia Road is quite narrow, and I am concerned that with the PBLs and the bus lanes that, as the previous Barbara just spoke to, that any vehicle that has to stop for any reason will block the entire lane of traffic, direction of traffic, as well as the safety concerns around the PBLs themselves. As I move through the city on my bicycle, I'm often very uncomfortable in the PBLs because pedestrian traffic, there's something about them where it seems that people don't recognize them as the street. So they sort of think of the street as being the other side of the cars. And so they'll step off the curb into the PBL without looking for traffic. And the type of traffic that travels in the PBLs is quiet. It doesn't make the kind of noise that a vehicle does. And so it doesn't attract the same attention of pedestrians. And so I've sort of encountered that myself both as a pedestrian and as a cyclist, stepping off the curb into a PBL like on M Street and like almost getting clocked by somebody on a scoot, an e-scooter, or riding a bicycle in them, and having someone, a pedestrian step off as well. We do have a lot of older people in our community. It's a very dense community, and a lot of them have mobility issues, and I am concerned about how that would impact them. And as the previous barber said, I think largely, at least in the 1800 block where we are, it seems like a heavy-handed response to the safety concerns that are there. And I would like to sort of see, more, like maybe some of the existing infrastructure, like perhaps the bike lanes could be painted a bright color. Perhaps there could be more consistent enforcement of the soft bike lanes that are in existence. But it seems like maybe this thing has a momentum of its own, and I'm concerned that it's sort of like is going to happen regardless of how people feel about it. But my sense of it is that people in the community are not aware of it, and that it's sort of being rushed through. And it'll be done and dusted before people can really have a chance to react, and maybe that's part of the strategy behind it. I don't know. But I appreciated the first Barbara's comment about maybe extending the NOI period, because I don't think the message has gotten out. So yeah, that would be my comment. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I have one quick question for you, Mr. Fenty, just because your
Mhm.
business is SMD. What kind of outreach, I can't speak for DDOT, of course, but what kind of outreach would be effective for businesses and residents alike to understand what's going on? Like, we don't have the budget to be printing out flyers for every item every month, unfortunately, but it could be a possibility, or other mechanisms. Like, what do you think would be helpful?
Well, it was brought to my attention by a resident, and she dropped off a flyer that had links to the project that I could research myself. So, I mean, I don't know, what I mean, what kind of time the SMDs, the commissioners for the SMDs have, but like, I mean, somebody could have stopped by the store and say, hey, you know what I mean? Like, this is a pretty big deal. So, I mean, it's, yeah, I'm not sure I can answer, what the best approach would be, but like, yeah, somebody maybe stopping by and say, hey, this is what's going on.
That's
Here's some
helpful.
information about it. If you, are interested, if you have comment, we'd love to have your feedback.
I appreciate that. I do make my rounds to businesses. You're not always there when I come to Fleet Feet, so that's neither of ours fault.
Fair enough. My wife or I are pretty much always there. Yeah.
I'll do a better job, but yeah, I do try to do my best. I mean, that's helpful comment. Thank you.
It's not a personal indictment. I'm just saying I didn't know.
I mean, I think collectively our commission, and I've seen lots of commissions, is a very common issue, which is it's hard to get a lot of people aware of things on a regular basis. Even if I've been paid for other things where I have to tell people stuff, and getting anyone to just acknowledge you exist is hard, even when you're paid for it. Let alone when
I served on the SMD, up here I live in 16th Street Heights, and I served 2 terms in 4CO3. So yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Shapiro, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Well, is Jared Allen still here?
Rod, I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure he dropped off.
What's shocking to me is why DDOT literally did not have somebody go door to door and talk to every single business there. And I can't imagine why they did not do that. Maybe Kristen, maybe they did, Kristen. Maybe you can answer, she can answer that question. But the fact that when Mr. Fenty heard about it 2 or 3 days ago, there's a problem there. There really is. It's clearly there hasn't been enough outreach. Too many people didn't know about it.
Commissioner Falskini.
Kevin, when he spoke at our last meeting, said that he had gone door to door and handed out flyers, and that's official testimony from DDOT. Obviously, they don't hit every business when they go out. They miss some. Also, you have some of these folks have just staff that are working that don't pass along whatever it is that they get from DDOT. And so it doesn't go to the business owner. It just ends up sitting with the staff or gets tossed or whatever. So what we've gotten official notification of, at least, is that I believe Kevin said that he walked up and down Columbia and handed out flyers to all the businesses that he was able to access twice during the time of this project. So I just wanted to clarify the record there.
Thank you, Jake. I don't remember that. Okay, thank you.
Looks like next up is Beatrice. I know that you've been active in the chat, so we're looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you. I wrote a lot in the chat. I don't know how much is visible to everyone. I just want to reiterate my opposition to removal of parking spaces. I do not use my small car every day, but I do need a parking space for myself. I have a small child that I have to take to the pediatrician, to the doctor, to certain places. I need to do groceries. So this plan to use bikes, to prioritize bikes, it's and removing parking spaces is detrimental to the quality of life of families. What you're doing is just driving out families. So this seems to be a priority for people who are able to bike, mostly men, I guess, without children, an occasional, woman, but it seems to be that it's very biased. And not only that, but it will reduce the quality of life also, because friends will not want to visit you in the neighborhood where they cannot park. They would not want to do business in a neighborhood where they cannot park and go to a restaurant, or they cannot go to a certain, store. So in our block on the 2200 of Columbia Road, those parking spaces are not metered. They are for residents. And if you remove them, you will be really hurting the community. And actually, you don't need the buses to go faster. You just need to pass more frequently, and that would encourage people to take the buses if they run more frequently, not faster, because as it has been said, there are children in the community, there are elderly people, there are people who walk dogs. Going up from Connecticut to Columbia, the cars speed up, but it's needed is a traffic light there, that crossing, because it's very dangerous. I stopped using that zebra crossing in the evening when I pick up my daughter from the school bus stop, because I've had a couple of close calls, and I've raised this several times with 311, with the DOT, and nothing has been done. That flimsy stop for pedestrian sign has been run over a couple of times, has been replaced a couple of times. So what needs to be done is to increase the security, is not to put those flimsy stop for pedestrian signs or those bike protected lanes, because those are no match for the UPS and truck drivers. They have, just in my blocks, there are 3 that are down and have been replaced, and again. So those and sorry, but Washington is not Amsterdam. It's not a flat city. It's a very spread out city. So you need to provide several means of transportation, not just bike, because with a bike, there's only so far you can go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Just a couple quick points. I believe it's a bus priority project, so I know that bike lanes are involved, but I think this purpose is to prioritize buses. And also, that's really helpful commentary talking about residential parking. There is a potential for more residential parking to be removed, and this commission worked to try to avoid that. So never going to satisfy everybody, but it's definitely been something that's been brought to our attention. We've worked to do our best to advocate for residential parking to be protected. And I hope that you're all right. Those close calls can be scary. And I'll let Commissioner Falskini address the rest.
I just wanted to correct the record. The 2200 block of Columbia will keep its parking. That the parking will not be removed along that block. Folks who have testified about the 1700 block of Columbia, y'all are right, rightfully. The parking will be removed there, but it will not be removed on the 2200 block of Columbia Road. It is currently slated to still have parking on either side of the street. It's just that it will be sidewalk, bike, and then parking. But there will still be parking there. And it will be residential only, like resident parking that is available there. So just to correct the record, I know that there was some misinformation that was going around to the neighborhood on flyers about the removal of parking along that entire stretch, but that was absolutely incorrect.
Appreciate the correction. Always good to be accurate. And I remember one other thing, talking about bus frequency. This commission worked to protect, at least for 1 year, one of the bus lines. So hopefully it'll happen again.
Can I ask you a question?
Commissioner Jones.
Jake, you were saying the parking along 16th, the 16th and 1700 block of Columbia Road is going to be removed?
Yes, that's correct.
The Safeway, that's the Safeway and
No, the next block up from the Safeway until 16th Street.
Yeah, the eastern side, further east.
Yeah, only I believe there was someone on earlier from one of the buildings that's up along there, and
yeah, that's one of the Barbaras.
And they are correct that that block is currently slated under this project to have parking removed, but the parking along Columbia Road 2200 block was kept.
so the building at 16th and Columbia Road, that goes from 16th to Mozart. Does it Mozart? That's going to be
One more.
All that parking is going to be removed. Hello.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I have to refer to the plan again, that map, but
So we're talking about the same correct intersection or the same intersections.
maybe while we look up and clarify that. I know, Peter, there were a couple more people who were waiting to comment.
We'll get back to you on that, Commissioner Jones, just to make sure we get the accurate assessment.
Okay, all right.
Next up is Ezra. Welcome.
Oh, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I strongly support this plan. I live just off Columbia Road. I bike, I walk, I take the bus, I do sometimes drive. And I think the redesign plans for Columbia Road are great. So I want to explain why, and then I wanted to respond to a couple of other things that we've heard tonight. So DC has set a goal, a very admirable goal of reducing car usage in the city, encouraging people to take trips by modes other than car. And that's a really good goal because cars really do a lot of damage to the city for a lot of different reasons. For one thing, they pollute, they damage our air. They contribute to climate change. They contribute to asthma and other problems in cities, bad air quality. Drivers often drive dangerously. They drive too fast. They don't pay enough attention. This leads to drivers crashing, which causes injuries and unfortunately too often deaths to cyclists, to other people in cars, and to pedestrians. We saw that on Columbia Road not long ago. There was a fatal car crash, which killed a pedestrian. And lastly, we simply don't have room to have a car for every person in the city. Cars take up a lot more space than a person, and we already dedicate a huge amount of public space to both moving cars in driving lanes and storing people's cars on the side of the road. So the geometry simply doesn't work. And by this plan for Columbia Road will reduce, in some cases, space for cars, and instead it will prioritize bikes and buses, so that will encourage people to get around by bus and by bike who may currently drive. It'll also discourage driving. So those are two ways that this plan will advance the goals of reducing driving. Obviously, biking, walking, and taking the bus are options that most of us can take advantage of, but I do know that a small number of our neighbors do have no choice but to drive. That's why this plan reduces parking but does not eliminate it. You'll still be able to drive, you'll still be able to park. In some cases, it might be for a shorter amount of time so that you can do your errand and then someone else can use the space. You're not just keeping your car there long term. So I think this is a great plan. I know a couple people have talked about, whether this plan has been moving too quickly or they just heard about it and they're upset that they're not able to have time to mention it. I wanted to just say, I believe this ANC first passed a resolution calling for protected bike lanes on Columbia Road in the summer of 2019, so close to 5 years ago. I first became aware of the specific plans almost a year ago at the July 2023 meeting where DDOT presented its plans. They didn't have the specifics that they released earlier this year, but the idea of, we'll swap the parking and biking lanes so that the bike lanes will be protected. We'll add more space for buses so that buses can avoid some of the traffic that we see on Columbia Road. That, was presented many months ago. That was, told to all of us through emails, updates from the ANC, updates on the Adams Morgan listserv. And, shouldn't come as a surprise that DDOT is working on that. Some people may feel that the plan is moving too quickly. From my perspective, actually, it's moving much too slowly. I wish that this could have happened even faster. The plans were originally supposed to be released in fall of 2023. That got delayed until February of 2024. So it's already actually somewhat behind schedule. But nonetheless, I understand there are always, things that delay projects, and I just hope that they can get it done as soon as possible. We heard from the previous speaker a lot of concerns about cars and trucks driving dangerously. I, of course, share those concerns. To me, the solution is not, stop the plans and keep things as they are, because that will only let drivers continue to act dangerously. The solution is traffic calming. And one of the best ways to calm traffic and encourage drivers to slow down is not asking nicely or putting up signs, but it's making roads narrower, making it so that if you swerve a few inches to the left or to the right, you will actually hit some concrete somewhere rather than just go into an unprotected bike lane. And that gets cars to drive slower. So this plan will help with that. For the most part, along most of this corridor, especially west of 18th Street, the plan is just take the parking lane that exists now, take the bike lane that exists now, and swap their places. Very little parking is lost west of 18th Street, and I really don't see what the downside could be for any drivers. Access to each alleyway will be the same, but the advantage is that it's safer for people like me who ride bikes, and that in turn will hopefully encourage more people to ride bikes if they feel safer. Because right now, if you spend 30 seconds on Columbia Road, you'll see that there's a painted bike lane, but cars and trucks park in it and block it all the time. So because the drivers don't respect the painted bike lane, we need to convert it to being protected. And the places where there is parking loss, as you were discussing on the 1600, 1700 blocks, that is really not to make room for the bike lane, because the bike lane already exists. The width is sort of already there. It's to make room for the bus lane. And in that case, obviously it's a trade-off. Some people might say it's more important for me to park my car than for bus riders to get where they're going quickly. I think the opposite should be true. I think we should be prioritizing buses because they're much more efficient. And to me, it's a no-brainer that we should prioritize people riding on buses and get them where they're going faster rather than a handful of car spaces. And that brings me to my final point, which is, we've heard from a number of people that, they live on this block or they live near this block and they need the parking. Well, how many people live on Columbia Road in this study area? I mean, it has to be in the thousands. Just for a quick reference, I looked up the Argonne, the apartment building that looked like it has about 275 units. So, presumably more than 275 adults living there. You've got other large apartment buildings all up and down the corridor. So I think it's got to be thousands and thousands of people who live just on Columbia. And there's not going to be space for them all to park. According to the DDOT information that they released in February with their notice of intent, there are currently 186 parking spaces up and down Columbia, of the majority of which would still be retained. So you're only going to have a fraction of people able to park. And that's just because, if you imagine an apartment building like the Argonne, you have hundreds of people living there, and the width is enough room for maybe 15 cars, maybe 20 cars at most. So we can't keep prioritizing private car storage on our streets because it just comes with a huge cost. So for all those reasons, I think this is a great plan. I hope that the ANC will support it. And I imagine that if they do and DDOT builds it, that it will be just like every other bike lane in the city where there's opposition when it is planned. And then when it's built, none of the nightmare scenarios come to pass. And people can almost not imagine what it was like beforehand because it just makes so much sense. So thanks very much.
Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. It looks like we have one more hand at the moment. Barbara, we're back to you. There's not a third Barbara, is there? Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm the first Barbara. I just wanted to follow up and say that I'm really surprised that the owner of Fleet Feet didn't know about this. And my comments earlier about notification were aimed at DDOT and not you all. And I'm a communications professional. I can tell you the description of the notification plan was not to reach every single person in the community. I talked to 3 businesses across the street from the Calverton. 2 of them were not aware of it. That would be Metro Liquor, and that would be Federalist Pig. So really prominent businesses. Kevin Harrison, I spoke with him on the phone last Friday for perhaps a half an hour. He said that he dropped off a flyer at our building, but it was one flyer for 75 plus units. And I just don't think the communication was effective on DDOT's part. And I don't know what you all can do about that, but I just think that the notification period should be extended. The public comment period should be extended. And a final point is I hear a lot of people who support it are focusing on a lot of macro issues, but this has also built up a lot of micro issues. And one of the micro issues is residents losing access to pick up in front of their residence. I don't know what my older neighbors who use walkers are going to do when there's a bike lane preventing them from getting picked up in front of the building. And I'm not hearing any comment. I couldn't get Kevin Harrison to explain how that would work. And I wish somebody here would explain how they thought it would work. You're walking 8 feet now to get picked up, and when the bike lane gets put in front of my building, you're going to be walking 60 or 70 if you can even get somebody to park over there on Quarry Road. So thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Laughlin.
Sorry, just looking at that. I think it does sound that maybe DDOT has not maybe communicated as well as it could have. And I think this is also a common complaint about that agency. So I think it's important during oversight season for ANCs and maybe our particular ANC to make comment at those oversight hearings to ask the director of DDOT to provide maybe what their communication plans with what that plan is when they go out to communities with large infrastructure updates like this. I think that's important to put out there. Another thing, and I've seen it in the questions, and I know it's also come up with the bid, and I think many of us have questions when enforcement by DDOT, DPW will be imperative. I think loading zones in front of Safeway will be a tremendous asset to the community instead of the trucks parking sort of in the middle of the road or wherever they want. I think having drop-off zones for ride shift drivers will be really important instead of them stopping in the middle of the street. It'll be great if delivery, like food drivers, actually have a zone that they have to go. Like that's what a modern city should be doing, and that's where we should be at as a city. But we will have to remind agencies to do the enforcement. So that's on us. That's on all of us to do. But this is a step 1 of this project. The enforcement will have to be a partnership to do that as well. And then I think those are the biggest points I wanted to reach. But I think during oversight hearing, it's not just for ANCs. Members of the public can also go to those oversight hearings and register public comments.
I think that I don't know the specific topic, but it might be at the point of submitting written comments for DDOT.
Yeah, or do written. Yeah.
Let's see. Mr. Fenty has his hand back up, so I'll go to him and then to you, Commissioner. Mr. Fenty.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a follow-up question, and I'm not sure if you all can answer it, but I've heard a lot of comments about once these type of infrastructure changes have taken place that, it's been successful for business and the community is sort of happy with it and people can't remember how it used to be and it's all wonderful. I wonder, is there a comparable stretch of road that can be pointed to with the type of population density and mixed commercial space in a fairly narrow road with that type of traffic volume that somebody could point to that these type of changes were made and it was successful?
I'm not familiar with all the academic literature. I was sent a lot of it today that was suggesting that the answer might be yes to that question, but that's a lot of variables, so I'm not gonna pretend that I know a specific answer. But if anyone else has comments on that, please chime in. Commissioner Falskini, go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner Wood. So just to quickly go to that question, and then I'll go to broader comments. Ninth is probably the best example. There's also 20th through downtown is maybe a little bit more of an exact comparison, just because the bike lanes are separated on both the east and the west sides of the street. It is a little bit different, obviously, because it's a downtown. There are less people that are fewer people who are living there, but lots of businesses and lots of other things going on there, lots of commercial needs, et cetera. So that may be a good example. I don't think 14th is a great example on this, just because the bike lanes were built differently than the bike lanes that they're looking at for Columbia. And so they hopefully these ones have learned from some of the mistakes along 14th and will actually handle the multimodal transit issues a little bit better. And then there are several other examples of bike lanes in the city, like 9th Street, that have just really been handled quite well, and neighborhood fought it pretty badly when it first came in, and seems to actually be really benefiting the neighborhood a lot right now. Okay, so broader comments. First, I'd just like to say, as a parent who has little kids, I know the struggle. I know what it is to try to wrangle little little unyielding terrorists into an automobile with traffic oncoming, and how precarious that feels, and how at risk you feel during that. And so I don't want to minimize the fear of folks that have spoken up about that struggle, because it's very real. That said, there are lots of parents with young kids right now who are not driving their kids around. Instead, they're trying to bike them or walk them around the neighborhood. And we're terrified all the time. We're terrified of the automobiles tearing through our neighborhoods, of them completely disregarding any sort of signage whatsoever about bike safety. And as my kids get a little bit older and I'm trying to teach them how to ride a bike in my neighborhood, I am afraid for their lives every single time they get on one of those bikes, because they are not in a space that is protected from the terrorists from Virginia and Maryland and our own city that come flying through our neighborhood with thousands of pounds of metal, just looking to get somewhere with no regard to my child's life. And that is exactly what happened to Nina Larson when she stepped out of work at Mintwood Place about 2 years ago, right after I took this job on the ANC. And we had to meet her family after she was killed by a car. We went out and had a vigil for her, and we listened to all of the folks in our neighborhood who told us that they wanted and needed more protection on their streets for pedestrians and for people on their bicycles, that they felt safer, that we weren't only prioritizing single mode automobile travel above every other type of transportation that can happen in our neighborhood. And so I feel like I owe it to Nina and her family to make sure that we are creating the kind of neighborhood that is going to make sure that there are no more Nina Larsons in our future. And that's exactly what this plan is trying to do. It is trying to make sure that we are creating a space that is safe for our bicyclists, that is safe for pedestrians, and that is safe for bus riders. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a headache for people who are parking their cars. And I'm not going to lie about that. That's just true. And you know what? That's a sacrifice that I think that we as a neighborhood need to be able to make in order to make sure that all of these other types of transit and all these other types of ways of getting around are safe and easy for the rest of the residents in our neighborhood. And for all the comments about it being men who are like on their bikes, I'm on my bike all the time. Yes, I'm a man. I am also very aware of the other people that are on their bikes around me. Lots of women, lots of kids, lots of poor folks, lots of folks of color riding around trying to get to their jobs up here on 18th Street and around the neighborhood and on Columbia. This is not just transit that's going to serve the wealthy, that is just going to serve men. What we know about protected bike lanes is that when you build them, more women ride their bikes because they feel safe on the streets. And that is well documented in all sorts of literature all around the country. And so, building these will make our streets more accessible to women, to children, to families going out there. To my friends who live up on Columbia Road a little closer to 16th Street. I acknowledge this might be a little bit of a challenge. For the folks in the Calverton, I will note you have a garage. Like, there will still be a curb cut through the bike lane to go into your parking lot. And cars can pick you up there. And it is an additional 30 feet away from your front door. Like, literally, maybe 50, maybe 50. And yes, that's 50 more feet. And there are a few people in this world for whom 50 feet is actually a big deal. And for the vast majority of us, it is not. And so for those few people, I acknowledge it'll be a little bit harder. Let's not use those people as pawns in our conversation about what is really going to be at stake here and what's not going to be at stake. Because there is absolutely a space right there, 30 feet away in the curb cut to y'all's parking lot where someone could be picked up by a car if they needed to be. There's also a street just a little bit north of you. Again, maybe another 30 to 50 feet in the opposite direction from your front door where a cab could pull in and pick someone up on the side of the road there on Quarry Road. So I acknowledge it's uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable. That one, I actually, do feel sympathetic to the folks who are up there, but also that stretch of Columbia Road from 16th to 18th Street is one of the slowest stretches for buses in the entire city, And so it's on us to try to figure out how to fix that. And the only way that we could do it in these circumstances with the limited space that we had here, and we've been working with DDOT on this for 2.5 years. Since I've been on the commission, I've been working on this with DDOT. We've had DDOT come and speak to the commission, I don't know, 8, 10 times about this over the last 2.5 years. And present these plans and have tried to hone them up and make them best for the neighborhood. And the best way that we could figure out to increase bus speed in that compressed corridor right there where we know wait times are really horrific, was to make the bus priority zone through there. And that kind of forced our hand on parking on the block. And there was little that we could do about it at that point. As to raised bus platforms, those are actually meant to be safer for older folks and for kids and for folks that are trying to get on the bus who are movement impaired. By having them a little bit raised up and with having a raised walkway to get onto them, they're actually more easily accessible for folks with handicaps. And that allows them to then not have to step up so high when the bus pulls up to the curb. So the bus will pull up, they're already at an elevated level, and they can get directly into or wheel directly into the bus without the bus having to stop and lower. So it's meant to increase travel times for buses all along the corridor because they don't have to stop and use their hydraulics to lower, but instead everybody can just get on very quickly, especially folks with wheelchairs or other disabilities that makes it difficult for them to travel. So that's actually meant to increase times. I already noted the 22 block of Columbia that you know, we did, and Daniel and others did a lot of great work here, listening to the community. Lee did as well, to really ask DDOT to go back and call the question as to whether or not the traffic really was bad enough to justify a full dedicated bus lane along there. And after a while, they went back and determined that travel times had changed during the pandemic, and they put the parking back in that area. And so I think that's a sign that people have been listening, your commissioners have been listening, and we've been working hard to try to solve the problems that have been brought to our attention over the last 2.5 years. As to businesses, I can't say why any one particular business didn't hear about this project. I apologize if that's the case. I've been communicating about this relentlessly to my SMD, but we are unpaid, we are volunteers. We are not given a list, like some magic list of the people that live in our SMD. We literally have to like go walk around and try to get it from everyone. And it's extremely difficult. Like no one gives it to you and you can't just get it magically somehow. Like, you know, you have to go knock on doors, and not everyone opens their door all the time, and it can be a real challenge. And even if you do the work, like sometimes you don't reach everyone. So, you know, in the instance where folks have not heard about it and you're in my SMD, I apologize. I really have tried to do my best to communicate folks with here. And I know DDOT has tried as well, but yes, maybe they can always do better. And yes, maybe they need more of a budget to be able to communicate to the neighborhood. And so coming and speaking at their hearing in front of the city council, as Commissioner Laughlin suggested, would be a good way to try to get that a point across to DDOT. And so much here is going to come down to enforcement, making this a livable, workable solution for our neighborhood is going to mean that it has to be enforced very well. And we all know that the agency in charge of enforcing our biking and travel and transportation restrictions in the city really struggles with that. And so it's really going to be on us to file a lot of 311 complaints and make sure that they're coming out here and actually enforcing this well so that people are moving. I spoke a lot. Those are my overall thoughts on it. I really appreciate everyone's thoughts. I'm not trying to disregard them. I do hear that there are challenges that people will face. In the grand scheme of things, I think that this is the best solution for our neighborhood.
Appreciate those thoughts. Can't speak for everyone, but well said. I think that reflects a lot of what I think as well. Rosalind, your hand is up. Thanks for your patience.
Is this something coming up for a vote right now?
Oh.
All right. We're just being presented with an update.
One more public comment. Just a second. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. Rosalind.
Okay, because this is the first I'm hearing of it. And my residents are directly affected by it because of that building on Columbia Road between 16th and Mozart. And the problem is that when the zoning approved for them a waiver that do not constrain the residents to park in the underground parking, and all they did was push them out of the street on the Mozart, on the Fuller. I want to pay closer attention to this. I'll be in touch with the committee, and I just downloaded the information, and I'll be in touch with my other commissioners about this.
All right, thank you. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you for your patience, Rosalind. Floor is yours.
Great. Hi, thank you. Commissioner Palacini, you were speaking of safety, and while I appreciate everything you're saying, and I do agree that there should absolutely be revisions to how the plan is going, I agree with Barbara that I feel that there should be a longer public commentary because there's clearly not been enough notice to residents and businesses in the area. I would also speak to the safety of the fact that eliminating parking on 1600 and 1700 Columbia Road. I live in that area. I require a car because I have two 81-year-old in-laws and a 76-year-old mother who live in areas that are not accessible by public transportation. So I need a car in order to be able to access them because they're not in great health and I'm their only caretaker. So it's extremely frustrating to hear that you're saying that it's fine, it's going to affect those people, but this is more important. Apologies, there's a car siren. It's not safe for me to walk at night in this neighborhood. You spoke earlier, not you specifically, but it was spoken of earlier how crime has leveled off in DC. It hasn't decreased. I do not feel safe having to walk now 2 miles to get to my car at night because the parking is being eliminated in my neighborhood and they're not doing enough to increase resident only parking. If you were concerned about that, you would be looking into only making spaces resident only parking and not being 2-hour for local visitors. I appreciate that we want to increase people using public transportation. I myself use the bus to get to work, several times a week. So I'm not opposed to them making regulations. It feels like this is being rushed through without enough public commentary. And it's very concerning to me that public safety is not being concerned about the fact that there are a lot of crimes going on in this neighborhood that, I can be walking back from my car to my home and I can be robbed at gunpoint. And oh, well, it's more important to make sure that we eliminate parking for a bus lane. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Commissioners can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think that at the PZ team meeting last month, we did ask if there was any opportunity to extend the public input for this NOI, which is separate from the other public inputs of other stages of the process over the last 2.5 years. They seem to say that there was not really an opportunity for that at this point. Didn't really give, I don't recall them giving an explicit explanation, but it's definitely something that we've raised because it's helpful to get that kind of input. Because at least speaking for myself, and it sounds like a lot of other commissioners have the same position. We want to hear those experiences. We want to make sure that the ins and outs and the kind of the grooves of how this works affects people's lives, and it's important to be able to communicate that. That's our position, is to advise based on the input. So the more of that, the better. Can't get all of it, but hopefully we got some. Not opportune, but it's what we've been trying to do. Looks like that is the extent of input. There's no motion on the floor. Any final thoughts on this matter, commissioners? A lot of good thoughts, and hopefully it'll be something that not just for this, but for future transportation related issues will be items on our mind when we discuss this. Commissioner Stevens, go ahead.
Okay, so a few things. Did you just say there's no opportunity to extend the comment period? Is that what you said?
I don't remember. Other commissioners can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I sat in for the PZT last month, and that's what I recall. Commissioner Faustini, you want to address that?
I'm not sure if Commissioner Horowitz was, no, okay. Sorry, Michelson Horowitz. They said that is the official date that public commentary ends, but he will not stop reading commentary just because it came in after the March 15th or 16th deadline, whatever the date was. I can't remember exactly. So the neighbors should continue to feel like they can send in comments to DDOT. It's not like they're going to stop taking feedback right after 30 days. We likely as an ANC won't even take some sort of official action on this until April. So there's still plenty of time for everyone to voice their commentary, both to DDOT and also to us. So there's lots of opportunity still left for folks to talk about their position on it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds better to me. So they should comment directly to DDOT, and then they can voice their opinion to us, and then we will vote as an ANC in April. Okay. All right, that makes sense to me. But the other question is, so I know we're kind of short on time here, I guess, but can someone explain to me the whole one-way Ontario Street situation? The proposed converting the Ontario road to one way.
So Peter, I don't know if you're about to speak. So currently the light at Ontario Road, there's 2 segments because they both run in, but they are misaligned on Columbia Road. And so that's a very long light because they can't have them run at the same time. So the northbound has a light, and then that's red, and then the southbound has a light. So they want to align those one way directionally so they can have one phase going across Columbia Road. And that'll speed up more time for traffic to go east-west on Columbia.
Thanks for that.
Okay, yeah, so basically, I guess in a nutshell, it sounds like the folks in my SMD are fairly in favor of this plan, but their concern was that stretch of road becoming one way. And since I don't drive, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage in terms of understanding, in terms of direct experience. So I'll have to look into that a little more and talk to some folks. But really, I mean, that was sort of the main concern from my SMD. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks for that. Commissioner Paleskini.
Sorry, I did want to talk about the Ontario Road thing just really quickly. I'm very sorry. Um, I think it's a very real concern. There are not that many ways to get out of some of that pocket that Margaret represents in 1CO5, and especially going north can be a real challenge. And Ontario Road heading south to Columbia is a real access point for folks to be able to head north on Columbia Road. And so I am I am a little concerned. I know that I expressed this concern to Kevin throughout the entire process, that I thought it could be a real challenge for folks back in that section. And so I'm not running for anything after this. I'm just gonna put it out there right now. You can quote me on it. I really enjoy my day job. I want to go back to it full time. But I am very concerned about some of the access getting north out of that section with it being shut off. And so I do want to see some of the stats that I know that Kevin said that DDOT ran some numbers along traffic on Ontario, who is going south and who is going north. And I would like to see a little bit more before I express my approval of that particular part of the plan. That's the one thing that I've for a long time really struggled with why they're doing it. I understand they're trying to make that intersection much safer. I really appreciate that and how hard it is with the light scheduling. But I am concerned about access into that part of the neighborhood.
Thanks. I think Sasha had their hand up, and then we'll get back to Commissioner Laughlin.
Hi there again. So I guess just wanted to follow up on the two comments that I had. Was one, are there any considerations about potentially like zoning, since we're removing parking? As I mentioned in my comment, I have a car and I use it to drive to work, and I understand I'm in the minority of people being who'd be affected by this, and I support this. But I would love more buildings nearby so that I can actually work nearby instead of having to drive to Maryland. And then the other thing I was going to say is there any plan for either in these spaces, because I don't see any in the plan, or in collaboration with the buildings in the area to enhance bicycle parking? I think safe bicycle storage in other than racks would be, I think, a real benefit to encouraging bicycle usage, especially with this new corridor being developed. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Commissioner Laughlin.
I just wanted to, I think the Ontario one-way, I think that was a newer part of the plans, that I think that this is the first time I think it had been part of the plan, which was probably why it's newer to the commission. I'll say it's shares with my SMD as well. So Margaret and I have the same, and it is, I understand on paper logistically the recommendation for it, but I am also concerned about the traffic flow because of Harvard going one way down the hill. We have a lot of people who are going to the zoo and will drive up 18th to come up out of there, often to try to find parking. So we're always, we're just competitive. It's great that so many people are visiting our community that they search for parking, right? So it is part of the comments I'm sending into DDOT, and getting some asking for some traffic studies on that, because it's such a small stretch of street to only be one way. I see it causing it will take a lot of education for drivers to be more aware of that tiny stretch that'll be one way, which logistically, I don't know if it's the best. I don't know if it's the best plan, if there's something else that could be put on the table or that DDOT could consider.
Yeah, and to that point, I heard or saw a comment about potentially going the other direction, having the one-way stretch south of Columbia, reverse direction, so that it's all southbound, which would go into Euclid. But if you cut over one block on Euclid, there is a two-way stretch on 17th that could feed back onto Columbia Road. So, broadly, I would like to have us share the recording of this meeting with Kevin, so that this feedback gets to him. I know a lot of folks are writing to him, and they should continue to do that. But for folks who are only on here, and believe that their comments are getting to decision makers, we should make sure this gets to him as well.
All right, so I'll give it a moment. Any final thoughts on this matter? Otherwise, we'll move forward in the agenda. All right. Appreciate it again. Definitely a lot of information. As is made clear, not always everyone in agreement, but that's okay. That's why we're here, to find some sort of consensus, find some sort of middle ground. Next item was, I believe, passed unanimously from the PZT committee. There's a request for support for an application for a historic landmark designation for the old Chinese legation building, which I believe is technically on 19th. Is that right?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yes, it's on 19th at the corner of Vernon. Happy to introduce this item because it's in my SMD, and we also heard it at our PZT committee meeting. So the old Chinese legation is currently a condo building, but from 1903, I believe, through 43 or approximately in those years, it was originally the Chinese legation or delegation to the U.S. and eventually upgraded to full embassy status. And there's an application to add it to the National Register of Historic Places on the basis of its historic significance as well as its exterior architectural significance, designed by prominent DC architect Waddy B. Wood, and it's in the Jacobean style, revival style. We got a very detailed presentation, and the community has received the full application PDF. There's lots of really interesting pictures if you want to take the time to read it about who served in the building and its design. There's fantastic pictures of members of the delegation in the building. So I would move that we support this application. There was some comments about this particular parcel of land being taken out of potential future development, but it did receive the support of the members of the condo board that live in the building, and it is also part of a concerted effort to get more Asian American historic sites added to the register, and so we ultimately unanimously supported the application or issuing letter of support for it. The hearing before the Historic Preservation Board is at the end of this month, so this is our chance to send a letter of support.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Pasquini, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just gonna say it now. I'm a flip-flopper, and so I supported this in committee. I'm not going to change my position. I think it's a great application as far as historic preservation applications go. I think it's wonderful to preserve some history for the Chinese American community, given that it's a historically underrepresented community that hasn't had a lot of its historic places preserved and kept in memory. That said, I fundamentally disagree with the idea of historically preserving any space for an unlimited period of time. Nothing should be forever. Not justices put into their seats, not any sort of historic preservation. I just fundamentally believe that they should come up for renewal, maybe not every 5 years or every 10 years, but at least every 50 or every 75, because our idea of history in which we kept should be changed. It should be mutable. We should be able to adapt to changing times. And I just don't think that anything should be set in stone literally forever. So for that reason, and just to fire a shot off the bow of the Historic Preservation Board, and to let them know that I won't be voting for any others that come before the commission for the rest of the time that I serve here. I object.
I appreciate that. One point of clarification, I don't know who's best to address this. The property's currently already in the Washington Heights Historic District, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone know? I should know off the top of my head. I'm just drawing a blank. The duration of that kind of quote unquote protection or limitation of development, is that also indefinite, or is that some sort of fixed time frame? I forget specifically for Washington Heights. Commissioner Foskey.
Yeah, that's also indefinite. And so this would indefinitely take a entire set of housing stock out of supply for the neighborhood, which is everything that could otherwise be developed in that space under current standards of zoning on that block. And I know, like, it's not a huge block. It's not like it's like a ton of housing, but the idea of doing that forever seems out of touch for me in a housing crisis.
The motion on the floor is to support this.
Wait, sorry. Just one quick
asking for comments.
Can I ask one quick clarifying question? Just so Commissioner or Chair Wood and Commissioner Falaskini, is this already in a historically protected area? You said that it's in the Crown Heights protected, historically preserved area. Is this an additional layer of protection on one building? So it's already historically protected. The block is historically protected. This would be one specific building that is already historically protected within that block. Is that correct?
Yes, the Washington Heights Historic District, which if you just Google it, you can see a map, includes basically everything on 18th, at 18th and west to Columbia, south from Columbia to Florida, basically. So check out that map. But yes, it's an additional, but it's also just a recognition of the building's history. You know, they could choose to put up a plaque on the building, that kind of thing. So yeah, but it is somewhat duplicative of the protections that are already in place.
Yeah, my question was, does it functionally change the status, or is it more a recognition of the building that doesn't have a technical impact since it's already historically preserved? Which it sounds like that is the correct.
Latter.
Commissioner Shapiro.
Does this allow them, by protecting the individual building, does this allow them to sell the facade?
Sorry, could allow them to what, the facade?
Sell the facade. You sell it on historically protected buildings. You can sell the facade as a tax. It's a tax scam. That's all it is. And by the way, I happen to agree with Jake for once.
You've agreed on other things.
Don't know much about this tax scam. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, if you go around, you will find dozens of buildings in this city that are on the specific addresses are on the list with HP, Historic Preservation, HPRB. And the reason, as I understood it, that they used to get on, particularly on the Hill, get on that list specifically, even though they were in the historic district, is that when the building is protected individually, then they're able to sell the facade as it's basically a tax scam. I don't know how else to describe it.
I'm also not familiar with that. I do not doubt that it is a possibility that has happened before. Commissioners, any further comments, questions? Also attendees, if you have anything, please raise your hand.
Sorry, just really quickly, Commissioner Falaskini, you said it does functionally change it. Can you just clarify? Because I'm not an expert on this and just want to understand sort of how functionally having that double layer of historical preservation would be a change. If you could just clarify.
Yeah, so my understanding is that when a neighborhood is historic, has historic preservation, you can still make changes to buildings within the neighborhood. You just have to keep to the general style of the neighborhood. So for example, like we just approved the rebuild on Calorama Road on the south side of the street. And that does change the overall facade of that building and its square footage and how high it goes. So it can still change as long as it still stays within the overall description of what the buildings need to look like in that historic district. When you historically preserve a building itself, it cannot change. Like the facade of the building has to stay exactly the same. It often has height restrictions. It can't go up any higher than what the old building was. Maybe there are some ways that you can alter it a little bit, but it really sets that building basically in stone. Like it preserves it as it is on the outside. The inside can change and can be altered, but the outside at least has to remain very, very similar to what it is at the time that it's given historic preservation. So my understanding is it is functionally different because one is like a general kind of style that the neighborhood has to adhere to, that when recommendations are made for changes to building, they just have to adhere to that style, but they can still be altered fairly substantially, like along Calorama, like that building along Calorama that we just approved. But when you historically preserve a building, it has to stay much more similar to what it actually is in that moment when you preserve it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone else or I am by no means like a expert in this. I've just done a little bit of Googling over the past like couple of months. So if anyone else has better information, please save me from myself.
I think I think you're right about that. To describe, and I used to build on the hill, to describe the difference when you're in a neighborhood. Let's say you have 1/1 windows. You know what? Do people know what that means? There are no dividing lines. If you replace those windows, you have to come back 1/1. You can come back 1/1 with vinyl or aluminum. But if the building itself is historic, you have to come back 1/1 in wood if that's what was there. And the other, of course, if the building burns down or falls down, you have to build it the way it was. You can't, you could have everything behind there destroyed, but you have to come back exactly what was there in the same style. I think the fact that it's in a historic neighborhood is more than sufficient.
Yeah, just kind of thinking aloud here, because this is also helpful for me. I abstained during the committee meeting just because I wasn't fully informed, but there's kind of, at least in my view, there's a couple ways to look at it. One is there's a historic preservation district already in place. What would it hurt to add something else on? On the flip side, there's already historic in place. What would be the advantage for going out of the way to add an additional restriction or protection, depending how you look at it, onto a specific building? All right, just not really a conclusive thought, but a thought nonetheless. Any other additional comments, questions? Commissioner Michelson Horowitz.
Yeah, I'll just echo Jake's general concern. What swayed me on this application was that one, the condo board was in favor of it, and that it is a historically underrepresented building. And I know that you know, there are probably most condo boards would be in favor of it. But the latter was the deciding factor for me. And I did note an article to the commissioner that DC has more entries on the National Register of Historic Places than many other cities combined. You know, while much is wonderful and historic about our city, it also does materially affect you know, how much housing and you know, how much new use we can make of our buildings.
And that's sort of a point, for whatever it's worth in the future, if this meeting ever gets referenced. This is the first time, at least that I've been commissioner, that a historic place has been requesting support from this ANC. So no idea what will happen in the next few minutes in this meeting. But in the event that we were not to support this, it would just be an unfortunate line that there happens to be a population I think it sounds like we have pretty good agreement on deserves representation, which is Asian Americans in DC. This is not the only way for them to continue to get that representation, which is very deserved. But we just can't retroactively as a commission undo any historic places that we think are unfit. So I think it's worth getting that on the record, at least to some degree. Any last points, commissioners, attendees? All right, the motion on the floor is to support this application for a National Historic Register, historic landmark designation. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Commissioner Dixon, was that an abstention or a nay? I couldn't see.
That was a nay.
The motion passes 5-4. I believe that is the extent of, no, we have one more item. We can talk as little as much as we want about this. Informational, no vote on the matter. We did the same thing last month. Hopefully by next month we can have some sort of thing like we did last year, which is a list of recommendations for budget season that we can send to the mayor and all of council. Any thoughts? We can do this offline as well, but it's helpful, especially if anyone in attendance has any agency or agency specific budgetary priorities that you want us to consider vocalizing. This would be a good opportunity to comment on that. We talked about a bunch of things last month. I forget where we left off, but I remember Commissioner Michelson Horowitz, you were mentioning focusing on the revenue side of things. Do you have any additional thoughts to add to that conversation based on last month? No pressure, just curious.
I don't. I would personally be happy to link to a number of the resources from DC Fiscal Policy Institute, which does great policy research that is far more convincing and organized than I could state here. But they have talked about new options for revenue.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Any thoughts? We
don't need more revenue. We need less programs, less waste.
We've already disagreed on one item tonight. Let's pause. Let's pause the tension for this. Let's think. It's definitely tough. I mean, correct me if anyone thinks I'm mistaken, but the general vibe seems to be that this will be a budget austerity year, a bit of a tough crunch for trying to figure out how to fund things, which periodically seems to happen in DC and elsewhere. So it's tricky. I've advocated a bit it's tricky because performance oversight and budget oversight often kind of get pushed together, where it's people saying you should do this differently. Also, it costs money, but it's good to separate those. I've tried to make the testimony I've given call for identifying things we're investing in it now will save money in the medium and long term. I think that's a wise thing. And it's often people that are in very vulnerable positions. So like domestic violence is something I always support efforts to protect or support survivors. Any other thoughts? We can discuss this, like I said, elsewhere, but just want to have the opportunity for the public to chime in too.
I think we need to be aware that while this is going to be an austere budget, it's not going to be a one-off. Until we adjust our expenditures because of the drastic and rapid decrease in the value of our office buildings. We are confronted in this city with a huge budget gap. And I don't think everyone is aware of how bad it's going to be. And every office building is going to go to the Assessment Appeals Board, Adjustment Board, the Board of Assessment Adjustments, I think it is, because it's easy to prove your building is worth half what it was 5-6 years ago. And I think we need to be aware that there's just going to be a drastic decrease in our revenue from real property taxes on downtown.
So putting that in tangible terms, like how as a commission would you think would make sense for us to consider that when advising on budgetary issues for the next fiscal year? Like, are there specific priorities?
I think we have to be aware of. I think we have to be aware that we can't just keep taxing people, because eventually you're going to lose what little middle class is left in this. And if we keep taxing people, you're going to make it a little bit less attractive for the upper class to come into the city. We're going to be very dependent upon income taxes. The last thing we want to do is raise sales taxes. That's the most regressive tax there is. I for one I'd be all in favor of increasing income taxes and doing away with sales taxes, and particularly and this is easy for me to say, increasing it on the upper 2, 3, 4, 5%, but do away with sales taxes. A regressive tax doesn't help anybody. So congestion taxes, they're hard to do.
For the best of all of us, I think I will pause our tax discussion. It's important, but I don't want to get too into the weeds in this particular meeting. Commissioner Stevens.
Well, okay, so I just mainly wanted to ask, how long do we have to contribute to the Google document that you sent out? Did you say?
I mean, as long as you want. I mean, the specifics, I guess that there is an answer. So the budget, I forget the specific dates, but by the end of April, I think is when the council has their first markup hearing, maybe the beginning of May, end of April, I forget the specific day. It's available online. But basically, after our April meeting, the window for us being able to make recommendations is very narrow, just because they go through budget. The council goes through their budget oversight meetings, and then the mayor releases her draft of a budget. The council reads it and has sessions to address what they think needs to be changed or added or whatever, what they like. And once it gets to that point, it's very difficult as a commission, from what I've been told, for us to get a lot of big things changed, and small things are often hard too. But those are more tangible if we have a specific thing that we want funded that's really hyper local that's been done before. But long story short, I think if we have something by our April meeting, that's our best bet. That's what we've done in the past, or this commission has done in the past, just because it kind of matches the flow of when the budget oversight sessions.
And noting Kristen's comment that the budget will be released on March 20th.
Perfect. So that's kind of when the kickoff of all of that happens, because it's something to react to. There's often very long discussions, but we can be. Commissioner May Wai.
Oh, I'll be very brief, and it'll sound like I'm starting the tax conversation again, but I'm not. Commissioner Michelson Horowitz, if you'd like to talk in the next couple of weeks, I'd love to work with you to find some potential revenue raisers. I think when we're looking at an austere year, if we can find some ways to smartly bring in a little bit more money, that would be a good recommendation. So maybe we can chat.
All right. Anyone else? Well, that does a good meeting. Appreciate. Move to adjourn. Second done. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.